All right, so we're going to be discussing the topic of business writing. And the reason I like to do a separate Zoom session on this is because it's different when it comes to things like writing an essay. And a lot of students, all of you in this class, not all of you, this class is Biz 22, so not all of you, but many of you have already taken English 1A. And if you have, whether that be in high school or whether that be in college, you remember what writing an essay was like. And there was certain rules to follow when writing an essay. Typically, you would do things like, obviously have a thesis statement. You would have, the body of your message, the introduction of your message, and then the conclusion of your message. You would have documented resources. You would also typically double space your document, and you would also typically indent the first line of every paragraph. And then paragraph length didn't matter. You didn't care. Sometimes you could have a paragraph that was a page or two long. In business writing, however, it's completely different. Now, obviously, when it comes to grammar and punctuation and sentence structure and all that, that's all still the same. But the big difference is in how your document looks and how much content you include in your document, because busy business people don't have time to read long documents. So obviously being concise and being brief is always the key, but you also don't want to miss the opportunity to clearly communicate your message. And you also don't want to, be unclear and not foster any goodwill. You want to utilize the opportunity of communication through written form to be done in a way that you're still fostering goodwill, that you're not being too demanding or too direct. And sometimes it could come across that way in business writing if you're not careful. So you need to also take a little bit of time to foster goodwill. You're communicating with people generally. And so as a result of that, you want to make sure that you're developing relationship with them and that you're not just demanding things from people, because that could come across negatively as well. So what I want to talk to you about is, this is really my own little presentation, and I'll give you some samples later on of some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. But business writing, if you guys can see my screen now, I assume, right? Anybody?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So business writing is, again, when you're writing an essay, it's pretty much 100% how it reads, right? They don't really care how it looks too much, other than you usually make double spaced paragraphs and indent the first line, as I mentioned. In business writing, however, it's also how it looks. And what I mean by that is you want your document to be pleasant to the eyes. You want it to be scannable and skimmable. And what we use to describe that is the word readability. You want it to be very readable. And why I say that is, you'll see in a moment when I go through this, nobody wants to get a paragraph or just a wall. We call it a wall of text. So you send a document and it's just a wall of text, right? And that's extremely intimidating. And number two, nobody wants to read it, because like, oh gosh, now I gotta read this whole thing. I can't just scan it. I can't just skim it. I gotta actually read it. And so that can be very intimidating, and people will dread getting your emails. They'll dread getting letters from you because your document is nothing more than a wall of text. And so business writing utilizes what we call design elements to improve the readability or skimmability or scannability of the document. And even though in the past you might have seen business letters, you might have seen memos that didn't utilize a lot of these design elements, in the modern business world, these become extremely valuable. The big difference between 25, 30 years ago was the internet was just getting started, or not prominent. Email was very insignificant. And now a majority of our communication is done in email. And you and I are getting some kind of communication sent to us all day long, every day. And again, it wasn't like that 30, 40 years ago. And so the old way of doing it, and you could have got away with big walls of text because you didn't get a whole lot of communication pieces that came across to you like that. But now every day we're getting so many emails and so many forms of communication that we need to make our documents scannable and skimmable and literally whoever your recipient is should be able to scan the document and get the gist of it without necessarily having to read it in detail. And most people, if we're honest, we don't read everything in detail anymore. We skim and scan. And if it's something that's important to them and they realize that as they skim and scan it, they're going to read it. And so that's kind of the goal. So in other words, by making your document more scannable, skimmable, and readable, you're actually probably going to get it read a lot more likely than a big wall of text. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So it's 50% how it reads, got to have good grammar, got to have good, and we'll talk about that. But it's also 50% how it looks. And we'll talk about the do's and don'ts of both of those. And by the way, this is really your homework or discussion post assignment. I'm technically doing it for you, although I've given you some videos, and what I should have did and what I meant to do is to actually post this video into that assignment, and then every student would have to watch it because I'm not certain that everyone's going to watch this video, but I can tell right away when they do or don't, and I've gotten to the point now where I just give them a 0 and say, please watch the video on business writing if they don't do any of the things that I'm suggesting in the video. So you guys are benefiting because you're going to hear it all firsthand, and you'll be able to know what I'm looking for in the writing assignments coming up, as well as how to do business writing. And I think it'll make you stand out in your workplace if you apply these principles. So we'll get started. The first thing is I'm just going to do the do's of how it reads, and some of these are obvious, and then some don'ts, and then I'll do the how it looks. So the first one is, let's see if I can do this now. Okay, is your tone. It's very important in business writing that your tone be conversational. And in other words, a lot of people, when they do business writing, they think I have to be very formal and very stuffy. And so they use words like please be advised, and the hereunto and the undersigned says, or whatever. It's really needs to be conversational language, just like I'm talking to you right now. That's how your business writing should be. It shouldn't be fancy. It shouldn't be flowery. It just be conversational tone, we'll see here in a minute, using plain language. And that's the next thing. It should also be positive. It's really easy to sound harsh and negative in email, in text, in letters. The one thing that separates business writing is we always want to keep everything positive. We don't want to focus on what we can't do. We want to focus on what we can do. So if you guys remember in the writing sentences, I think you already did the sentence exercise. If you didn't, you're doing it right now, but it's where you have to rewrite the sentences. And if you go through the section on positive and conversational, if you can nail those down, you pretty much got it. Positive, again, focusing on what you can do. So for instance, one of the sentences in there is, due to the wet soil, construction is at a standstill and will not resume until the soil dries. So that's all negative, right? It's like you're focusing on what cannot be done. And the easy way to make it positive is just say construction will begin soon, once the soil is dry. So it's like you're focusing on what's going to be done and what can be done versus what can't be done. And so that's very important in business writing. You might get letters and requests and things like that where people are asking for something, and it's so easy to say, no, that can't be done, or we can't give you that refund, or we can't return the item, but we can do this instead. So you can always focus on what can be done. And that's the idea of being positive. So make sure that's the way it is in your writing. It should be very clear in plain language. Again, not using flowery. Again, when you're writing essays in your English 1A, you're trying to sound descriptive, and you're trying to sound educated, and you're trying to, give a certain tone that seems very professional or very creative. And that's not true of business writing. You want it to be clear in plain language. Say it as it needs to be said, and don't get all flowery and creative in how you write. That's really the idea. Again, you're going to be dealing with people in the business environment from all different cultures, all different backgrounds. And the best way to communicate with people from other nations and other languages is to use clear, plain English and clear, plain, everyday language. That's the idea. Oops, sorry. Next one is you want to be you-centered. Now, there's some sentences on this as well in the sentence rewrite assignment. And you-centered is, again, from the perspective of your reader. You always want to put everything in the perspective of your reader, not what we can't do as the company, not what we're going to do as the company, not what our policies are, but how does this benefit you? And that's the way we want to write in business writing, so that your recipient feels that it's valuable to them. If you write it all about you from the company's perspective, we need this and we want that and we demand this and our policy states this, then you're not thinking of them, and it's going to either upset them, it's going to offend them, or they're not going to abide by it. Being you-centered shows them how this benefits them. And so there's some sentence rewrites on that. Like, for instance, there's one that says, you can't get cash refunds on returned merchandise, and that's the way that the sentence was written. And it goes, it basically says, because of our company policy, you cannot get cash refunds on returned merchandise, but you can get store credit. Well, again, that's negative, and it's not you-centered. It's all about what the company can or can't do. So you can put it positive and say, to continue offering you name brands at discount prices, you can get store credit on returned merchandise, however, not cash refunds. So you focused on what you could do, and you made it about the person, so you can continue to get name brands at discount prices. So it's not about my policy any longer, it's about you. So that's you-centered. Again, brief and short, we call it economical. Business writing is economical. You should not have pages and pages unless it's absolutely necessary. Get rid of redundant language, get rid of long lead-ins to your sentence. I'm writing you this letter today to let you know. Why do you need to say any of that? Just get right to what it is that you're saying, or right while you're writing. So brief, short, economical, but not to the point where you lose the meaning of your message or where you don't foster any goodwill. And I think if you're going to add anything, you want to add more goodwill and courtesy to your documents. All right. You should also change up your sentence type. They say that business writing sentences should be about 15 to 20 words long, no longer. You should use simple sentences for the most part, but not all simple sentences. You'll go through this in your chapter, but those compound sentences, which add an and or a but, comma and, comma but, comma therefore, that just adds a little more so that your document doesn't read too choppy. But again, simple sentences are the best. One subject, one predicate. Just a simple statement that lets most people can easily understand. Most students run into a problem in this class because they just keep adding commas and more stuff and commas and more stuff. And that's not business writing. Now you got this long sentence and it's just a run on, or it's incomplete. Better to break up that long sentence into 2 or 3 shorter sentences that make it easy for your recipient to read. So that's the big thing. And I always tell everybody, when you're reading your paper, if you have to reread anything, then you've got a clunky sentence. That's what I call it. And I might even write it that way on your paper. This is a clunky sentence. We also get tunnel vision, though, when we're doing our papers and we think it reads fine. So give it to somebody else and let them read it. And if they have to reread any of the sentences twice, then it's too clunky. It's not clear and not plain enough. So change up your sentence type to make it so that it's not all just simple sentences, but also be careful that you don't have long run-on sentences. That's, again, simple, compound, complex, compound. Those are the different kinds of sentences your book talks about. Use proper grammar and punctuation, obviously. You want to be professional. Your professionalism is going to be seen more in business writing on your grammar and punctuation than it is on the flowery language that you use. Use complete sentences, so don't have run-ons or incomplete sentences. Make sure that there is, that's a full sentence and has subject and predicate and all those things that you learned about in English. A dependent clause and a independent clause, that it's an independent clause. It doesn't need anything added to it to make sense. You want to have your sentences parallel. And what this means is, and this is also on your sentence rewrite assignment, but parallel basically means that your sentence should have a flow to it that's parallel. So for instance, one of your sentence examples was, that the leadership is now going to be offering paperless meetings, to search and to try to filter data, to search data, and then to link or to cross-reference links. And it's not quite parallel. That cross-reference is not the same as the other three. So you have to make it, basically, I think it's search, it's filter, search, and link. Those are all single verbs. And so you make your sentence parallel. Another example is there's one sentence in there that says, Alma Cervantes is now from the Utah branch is now going to supervise the West Coast division. And then the next part of the sentence says, the Utah or the California branch person, Eric Doucette, is now going to supervise the East Coast division. Well, they're not parallel. Both parts of the sentence should follow the same flow. The first one has the name, the branch, and the division. That's the order of the sentence. So make the second sentence the same way. Second part of the sentence the same way. Name, branch, division. And that makes it parallel. So you'll see some examples of this in the PowerPoint if you go through it. And then you want to have proper structure to your document. There should always be an introduction of some sort, even if it's just a greeting or a welcome, then the body of your message, and then some kind of a conclusion. And so there should be a paragraph that's somewhat introductory. There should be the body of your message, and then there should be a conclusion. That's usually the last paragraph that you'll say, usually something like, I look forward to hearing back from you. And by the way, if you ever ask for anything, you're ever requesting any information, give a deadline date in that closing paragraph, saying, if you could please, submit that to me or send it to me by this date, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for your time and energy and effort. And that's all in your conclusion. And then you want to definitely make sure that when you write that you group similar information together. So we call this chunking. And in business writing, especially web writing, internet writing, you need to put the same everything in one paragraph that's of the same topic. So you don't want to be jumping from one topic in paragraph 1, then a whole new topic in paragraph 2, then back to topic that you started in paragraph 1 with in paragraph 3. No, you want to keep everything that has to do with one topic in paragraph 1, everything has to do with another topic in paragraph 2, etc. And that's kind of how you want to chunk it together. An example of this is it maybe your writing assignment coming up on a memo. It's a parking memo. And in the memo instructions, it's talking about day shift employees, swing shift employees, and all employees. But the whole thing is all mixed up. So it's talking about day shift, then swing shift, then all employees, then back to day shift, and then swing shift, and then back to swing shift again. And so it's not chunked together. It's not organized. And so your goal would be to organize everything that has to do with the day shift, put that in one paragraph and make it even better. Put a heading over that paragraph that says day shift. And then you might even make it, rather than a paragraph, a bullet list. So here's everything day shift needs to know. Here's everything swing shift needs to know. Here's everything all employees need to know. And that would be grouping similar information together. So that's pretty much it, I believe, for all the do's. Now we get into the don'ts. And again, this is how it reads. So you don't want to be too formal or too informal. So too formal would be really stuffy language, please be advised, the undersigned states, etc., but too informal is the other extreme. And that is where hey guys, you use very informal language. You emoji, or you use shorthand like you do in texting, things like that. You abbreviate stuff. Be careful of that. That's the too informal side. So again, clear, plain, everyday conversational language is how your document should read. Be careful of sounding negative, harsh, or again, focusing on what you can't do. Focus on what you can do. So don't say we can't do that, but if you can't do that, say we're unable to do that. However, here's what we can do, and focus on that. These are going to all be the opposite of what I already talked about. So again, not flowery language, not impressive, not trying to impress the person by how great your vocabulary is, because the negative there is you might have somebody who's going to read it that comes from another nation, and they're not going to understand those, big words. So don't worry about using big words. Use plain, everyday, simple words. Again, being me-centered or we-centered, this is about what you can do for us. And again, you need to make it you-centered, about what the recipient and how it benefits them. Again, long and unnecessary. So I think most students either go way too brief or way too long. So just trying to find the balance between those two. And what I mean by way too long is you say a lot of unnecessary things. So when I took this class, getting my bachelor's degree years ago, our teacher gave us a paragraph of text and said, I want you to edit this down to the bare minimum of what really is being said, and get rid of all the clutter, all the flowery language, all of the unnecessary words. And we got it down to one sentence. It was a paragraph of about 15 lines, and we got it down to one sentence that covered the whole thing perfectly. And so it just goes to show that a lot of times we write with a lot of clutter. So make sure you're not extra lengthy. Every single writing assignment in this class should be less than a page or less. In many cases, a half page. That's it. There shouldn't be any more than that. So again, avoid long sentences that keep having commas and commas and commas and adding on, or no commas and just going on and on. Again, if you can't read it, if it's not simple, it's going to be a lot harder to read. If you're not able to follow your reasoning and have to reread it, rewrite it. About 20 words is your goal. 15 to 20 words is the ideal. Not like a text messages. Make sure you're not making your document like a text message where you're abbreviating or where you're shorthanding. So you type things out. Even acronyms sometimes need to be typed out. We do LOL, laugh out loud, or whatever it stands for. Not that you would say that, but don't just use an acronym expecting somebody to know what it is. OMG, stuff like that. Again, not shorthand or emojis. No run-on or incomplete sentences. And again, a document that has no structure. So it's just it's just a myriad of different things all in a paragraph. That's you need to break those similar thoughts and put them together in a paragraph. So being disorganized all over the place, you don't want to do that. You want organization in your document. So I think that's it for the do's and don'ts of how it reads. And again, that's 50% of your document. But the other side that most students miss in this class, and this is equally as important, is how it looks. And this is 50% of it as well. So when I go to grade your document, I usually grade it. Your rubric usually looks like this. It says content, and this is, did they format it like the kind of document it was supposed to be formatted? Is it written well? Is it clear, plain, simple language? That kind of stuff. That's worth 20 points. Then I have on there readability for another 20 points. Is it readable? Did you use headings? Did you use bullet lists? Did you use short paragraphs separated by white space? Single space paragraphs, all the things that make your document more readable and scannable. That'll be the second 20 points. And then the last 10 points is grammar. So did you have any grammar issues? If there's sentences that were unclear, then that's your 50 points for your writing assignment. So we'll look at that, how it looks. First off, the do's. Very important. You should only use single spaced paragraphs in business writing. Now, this is a big shift from essays, because essays were always double spaced. In business writing, it's single spaced paragraphs. They're little chunks of information. Short paragraphs, as I'll say next. Short paragraphs, single spaced paragraphs, little chunks of information. And short paragraphs separated by a space. So you should have a paragraph and then a white space, and then another paragraph and a white space. A short little single space paragraph, white space. Short little single space paragraph, white space. That's the first main thing you need to know about how it looks. That's easy for the eye to read 5 or 6 lines, 4, 5, 6 lines. Easy to scan that and look at it and read it quickly. But a big wall of text, man, where was I at? I just moved my eyes and now I don't even know where I was, and that can slow down their reading and make it very frustrating. So very important, short, single space paragraph separated by a space. How long should your paragraphs be? No more than 8 lines. So if you count the paragraphs, like if you're looking at my screen now under the do's for how it reads, that conversational tone is 1 line, positive on focus on what you can do is 2 lines, clear and plain is 3, you-centered is 4, brief is 5, change up sentence type is 6, simple and compound sentence is 7, use of proper grammar punctuations is 8. That's maximum. Now, if you have a short document and it only is 8 lines, then make it 2 or 3 lines paragraphs. That's easier for the eye. The smaller the paragraph, the easier for the eye to see. And in fact, when it comes to chunking, as I did this in my class the other night, one of the authors said even 1 sentence paragraphs are acceptable and they're much easier to read. And so keep in mind, that's the key. And by the way, some of this stuff, if you haven't noticed in the emails that I send you, I've been practicing this. I've been using short single space paragraphs I don't do any long paragraphs. I break them up with bullet points and headings and different stuff, so that way you can scan it very easily. All right, next thing to do is proper formatting. Make sure you format your document like it should be formatted. So if it's a memo, there are strict rules for how a memo should be formatted. If it's a letter, there are strict rules for how a letter should be formatted. If it's an email, there are strict rules to how you should format and what you should include in an email. And we're going to be going over all of that over the next few weeks. But make sure it's formatted properly. Again, I'll get a document from a student. It's not formatted at all. I give them a 0 and say, please reformat this like a memo. It's not reformatted like a memo. And there's examples in the book on all of these, and plus some of the assignments you'll be doing, you'll be going over it. Make sure you have the proper margins in a document. Most all documents, especially memo and letter, always have margins. And by the way, whenever you're drafting a memo, and if you're drafting any of these documents, don't just use the text box feature in Canvas. I want you to create a document, separate document in Word, Pages, whatever. I prefer Word because I can't read Pages documents in Canvas. But if you do a Word document, I want you to create a whole new document. I want you to create the email, create the memo, create the letter on the document. That way you can do all the things that are going to be required for how it looks. And again, margins, you can't do any margins if you just type in the text box. So I can't tell whether you know how to use them or not, but margins should always be there. So left, right, left, top, right, and bottom should all be technically 1 inch. Unless you have a really short document, it should be 1.5 inches maximum. You should use there's always a title block of some sort in business writing. So whether that be a memo title block that has the to, from, date, subject, whether that be an email title block that has the to, from, date, and subject, or whether that be a letter which has inside address, return address, etc. That's or letterhead. Those are all what we call the title block of a document. And then all documents have also a signature block. So in a letter, it's certain things are required in the signature block. In an email, there's a lot required in the signature block. And this is where you put your name, your title, your phone number, all that kind of stuff. And on a memo, however, there is no signature block, just the initials of the author, and the author is up at the top in the title block. So make sure you have the proper formatting. Font size. Your font size should be no smaller than 10 and no larger than 12. That's considered to be the industry standards when it comes to business documents. So you don't want something that's 16 font. You don't want something that's 8. You want to try and shoot for 10 to 12 size. Definitely use headings. Now, you know what headings are. They're usually bold, sometimes all capped and underlined little titles over paragraphs or over sections of a document. Students don't use these enough, but they're so valuable when it comes to scannability, because you're telling me in that heading what's in the next paragraph, and that helps me decide whether I even want to read it. So using headings is extremely valuable for scannability, readability, and skimmability of a document. So please use them. Also use parallel bullet lists and numbered lists. Bullet lists take a whole paragraph, a wall, and they put it in a list that makes it so easy to scan and read. A lot of times students in this class, speaking of headings as well, they'll turn in their homework assignments or their check-in assignment. You guys are doing a check-in assignment every week. They'll just list all the answers in one big paragraph, all the answers to the 4 or 5 questions that I'm asking. And I'm like, where's the answers? Like, I can't see them. They're all hidden. And then other students are very gracious, and they actually type out the question in usually bold text. And then right below it, they put the paragraph of information that's answering that question. Some are even more savvy, and they'll make their answer in a bullet list. Here's the four reasons why that's true, or whatever. So much nicer, so much easier to grade. I just scan it. Oh, yep, they got the right things. Boom, I'm done. If it's a paragraph, now I got to filter through that thing and read it, and I'm frustrated. And I probably won't give them as good of a grade just because I'm frustrated. So keep in mind, this bullet list headings really work in making your document scannable. Make sure they're parallel. What I mean by that is a bullet list should always be capitalized. It should always usually use the same kind of first word. So if the first word is a noun, then they should all be nouns for every first word. If it's a bullet list that the first one is verbs, make them all verbs. They should all be similar. And you should only use a numbered list when there's a process or steps to follow. Other than that, always use a bullet list. And then you want to use bold, italics, and underlines and all caps throughout your document. Now, this is where most students don't take advantage of the value of this. But, bold text, italicized text, underlined text, all caps make it very easy to make important information stand out. So, for instance, dates, numbers, times, all those should always be bold. They should always be made to stand out. Those are the things the eye catches as it works through the document. It sees those little bold things or even all caps. It's not bad to use all caps in your document as long as your whole document's not all caps. So utilize, these are what I call design elements to improve readability. Bold text, italicized text, underlined text. So just go through your paragraphs. You might have a nice short single-spaced paragraph, but it has no design elements in it. So now I'm forced to read it. Highlight certain words that make me grab my attention, and I can basically scan that paragraph and get the gist of what it's about without having to necessarily slow down and read it. Or by scanning it, I realize, I want to read this and make sure I don't miss anything. So that's the use of design elements: bold, italicized, underline, and all cap text. You want to make sure you fit your document on one page. If you can't fit it on one page, then you should at least take up a quarter of the next page. If you can't justify the whole quarter of the next page, then edit it down to fit on one page. That's my recommendation. You also want to make sure it's centered in the page. So email doesn't matter because it's not a document, but a memo or a letter should always be centered in the page vertically. So if it's all up towards the top, it's not centered, or all down near the bottom, it's not centered. It should fill the page one way or the other, or be right in the center of the page. You keep your headings and everything at the top, but then you tab down or space down your document so that it sits in the middle of the page. And that's the other thing. Again, I said, unless you need 40% of the next page, make it all fit on one page. Use graphs, tables for data, and make your document visually appealing. So in business writing, you'll find that a lot of business reports, things like that, they use tables, they use graphics, they use charts, they use pie charts to show information, especially data, in a form that's very easy to view versus all packed away in a paragraph. So utilize those kinds of things to make your document more visually appealing. All right, here's the don'ts. Don't double space your document. The only thing in all of business writing that's double spaced, the only thing, is the title block of a memo. That's it. Your signature block, always single spaced. Your address block on a letter, always single spaced. All the paragraphs, always single spaced. Everything is single spaced. The only thing that's not and that is double spaced is the memo title block. That's it. Everything else is single spaced. Never, never should your document be one paragraph, and that's it. Hello, Eric. Paragraph. Sincerely, Trish. No, that you failed. That one paragraph should be broken into two or three paragraphs. Break it up, even if it's a short, unless it's a 2-line paragraph and that's all you're saying, obviously you don't have to do it. But if it's 4, 6, 8 lines, break it into 2 or 3 shorter paragraphs that are very scannable and readable, but never all one paragraph, and certainly not a whole page of text. That would be the big no-no. And if I get a document like that, I'll put a 0 and I'll say, please watch my video on business writing. All right, another one is improper formatting. Don't do that. Make sure you format it properly, and each week you'll be covering different documents to know how to do that. Make sure your font is not too large or too small, kind of the obvious. Not using headings is a don't. You should always try and use some form of headings. They help your document so much more. Not using any bullet lists. Again, any kind of list, questions, like you have a list of questions, put it in a bullet list. You have a list of items that you need, put it in a bullet list. You have a list of statements or things that people are reviewing, put it in a bullet list. Any kind of list where you're typing multiple things in a paragraph, make it a bullet list. That's an easy way to do it. And I think you should always use them for every document in some way or another. Not using any of these things is a note. Don't do multiple pages on something that could be short, and then not making your document visually appealing. So those are the don'ts that I have. So that's pretty much it. as far as the do's and don'ts of business writing. So what I'll do now is I'll just show you some examples of this with actual student writings. So, and I think I've removed all the names. So let me see what I can do here. I have a document. I have something here called business writing, and I put a bunch of documents in there so that I could just show you what I mean by some of this stuff. So you guys still with me? Are you okay?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, still here.
Okay, thanks, Adriana. All right, so let me just open a couple of these bad ones, and then I haven't looked at it, so I'm not 100% sure, but these are good and bad memos, and I'm just going to go through and show you why they're bad, and then I'll come back and show you good ones. So see if I can open all these. All right, there we go. All right, yeah, these are all good. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see, I think I might have to go back and forth. So let's just look at this one here. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so it says memorandum at the top, right? You guys see this document? All right, this is a memorandum. This is the parking memo one that I was talking to you about. This may be, by the way, this may be one of your assignments. I'm not sure which class I assigned this to. But this one's, I mean, the memo is formatted correctly as far as it says memorandum, and it has the double-spaced title block at the top. So that's good. However, there's no initials at the bottom. So memos always use initials at the bottom. And then look at the body of the text. I mean, it's just one big, long paragraph, right? So this is a poor example. They didn't use any design elements to improve readability. They didn't use any headings, any bullet lists. They didn't use short paragraphs. They did use a single space paragraph, so I'm proud about that, but that's the only thing they did right. And so this right here, I would mark them up quite a bit. I'd say, you know what, and not only that, but all their information in here is exactly how it was in the scenario. It has day shift employees and swing shift employees and back to day shift employees. And again, they didn't group the information together at all. So this document is poorly written. And I would probably, if I got that, I would send them a 0 or a low score and say, please go back and watch my video on business writing. All right. I'm going to share another one here. This is another bad memo. All right. Can you see that? So I'm going to be asking you that every time that you can see it. So.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so here's another memo. Same problem with again, everything's packed in one big long paragraph. In this case, though, they didn't format their memo correctly because they didn't make it double spaced, right? They made it single spaced, so they would need to make it double. And then you also, I didn't mention this, but a memo needs to have every line tabbed over so that they line up on the second part of the sentence, second part of each one. So now it's formatted properly. And it's also not centered in the page vertically. So I would probably, I'd bring this down like that to get it in the center. And then again, they didn't group all the information together. It's just, it's pretty much like the scenario read. They didn't use any design elements to improve the readability. They didn't use headings. They didn't use bullet lists. They didn't use any bold text, etc. So, and they also are missing the initials of the author or sender. In this case, the author was Eric Doucette, so it should just be ED at the end. If I had a secretary type it, it might be ED and then Linda Wolf, LW. Now that's a properly formatted memo. So that one was a problem. Don't save. All right, let's look at another one, another bad memo 3. And let me know that you can see that, please.
I can.
Okay, so here they did a good job on the title block, but what's wrong with the rest of it? What's wrong with the paragraphs?
They are double space.
Double spaced paragraphs, exactly. Now they did use some headings. I appreciate that. And they did also use a bullet list to break up the different spaces that are marked. I don't know that that's the best use of a bullet list, but they did have a bullet list. And then they have registration. But the big problem in this one is it's, again, double spaced. And I would say, hey, good job using a heading and a bullet list. And you did a good job formatting the memo. However, your whole document's double spaced. Go back and watch my video on business writing. Also, things like numbers, dates, time should always be bold. My eye's going to catch that 11:30 p.m. Thing there May 12th through 13th. So those kinds of things make, they make it stand out. And if there's something that's extremely critical, like for instance, this particular assignment says that you'll get a ticket right here. If you look right here in this paragraph, we encourage everyone to register their car and will be ticketed any cars that do not display a white sticker. Well, don't you think that should be really made to stand out? I mean, if you think about it, that people could say, I never saw that. Yeah, because it's tucked away in a paragraph. So now I just made it stand out, didn't I? So stuff like that, that's the thing you do in business writing, is you utilize those design elements to improve your readability. So let me give you another one here. Let me have one more to go. We'll be quicker on this one. There's another one. This one's really a problem. You guys can see that? So they don't have any title block there, right? You can see it, Adriana?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And here's another one I didn't mention. I should have mentioned this in the list, is no indents. See this indent? That is a no-no in business writing. There should be no indents. That is a big no-no. I should have put that in the list. I might go back and add that. But anyway, so yeah, so they didn't have any, they have, again, double-spaced paragraphs, and ultimately they had indents, but they had no space between the paragraphs. Again, didn't use any design elements to improve the readability. So this one would have failed on the multiple levels as far as any kind of a decent grade. So let's go to one more here. I think I have some letters now. Well, here's bad memo number 5. Sorry, I'm giving you guys so many. This one again, doubles. You guys, I'm assuming you can see it. There's no memorandum at the top. They didn't tab over every line after the colon, so that needed to be done on the memo. Again, we'll be going over this later. There is a improper signature block, because remember, memos don't even have a signature block. So I'm going to remove that. It's just the initials of the author. In this case, again, they did use a bullet list, and they did put space between their paragraphs, but they used double-spaced paragraphs and no other design elements to improve the readability. So poor, very poor example, better than some, but still not following the guidelines for business writing. And that's what I want to illustrate to you guys. Let me real quick, I'm going to open up a couple of good memos on the same topic, that parking memo. So let me go here to memo good. Let's see, memo good number 2, memo good number 3. I think that one of them is a PDF. So, all right, let me open those. All right, so let me share my screen and I'll show you the difference between what you just saw and what we got going here. So here's good memo. All right, so here's the same memo that was just in all in one paragraph, but now I used headings, I used bullet lists. So notice, has the proper, you guys can see that, right? Assuming you can, memorandum.
Yes.
And then, dear team, and then we've observed, so there's a short little paragraph here. Then I have all employees. What do all employees need to know? If you need to display a white sticker in order to get a ticket, not get a ticket. So what's going to happen? They're going to be a registration held on May 12th through 13th in the cafeteria. Okay, I better go to that. Oh, I'm not a day shift employee. I could care less, but I am a swing shift employee. What does that say? Swing shift employees may park at the curb. So everything that was tucked away in those paragraphs, so now I put in a nice little bullet list, and it's so much easier to read, right? And scan. It's 3 different groups of people being addressed. And the ones that are relevant to me are the ones I'm going to read, and I put it in a nice bullet list so I can scan. Oh, I can park in lot A and B, and there are assigned spaces. I need to avoid parking at the curb. Great. Perfect. So it just made a huge difference. And it made it pleasant to look at. It's not so intimidating. Let's see. Is this the same one I just did? No, maybe not. No, this one's different. So again, but the same concept. Oops. Same concept here. You guys can see that, correct?
Yes.
So again, parking guidelines, important information. I put it in bold. Vehicle registration policy. All employees must register their vehicle. Here's how. Day shift employees, I used all caps. I used bold. I use underlined. I use italicized. All that just makes it stand out. The only thing missing on this one is there's no initials of the author. So that would have to be down here, ED, and that would make it complete. Actually, the reason I didn't have them, here's the truth, is because I had the initials up here, Adam Smith. That's who it would be from, Adam Smith. So or Adam Smith. I don't remember if it has to be capitalized or not. I'm not going to grade you on that. But anyway, do you see the difference though? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, yes, it does. Definitely you can tell from day and night of like, or from day to night how different they are and how professional one document is from another.
Yep. And that's the idea. So this one here was a letter. So again, it's not formatted like a letter. A letter always has either a letterhead and then it has the return address of the person. Then it has an inside address, which looks like they kind of started somewhat of an inside address. And then, by the way, salutations where it says Dear Doug always end in a colon, not a comma. And then again, it's all one paragraph for the most part. And then they actually did correct on their signature block, but it shouldn't be double spaced. It should be single spaced. And they need to leave room for a signature, right? So it should look like that. But all of this, again, no design elements for readability, no, short paragraphs. They did single space paragraphs, which was good. But other than that, I would have probably said, go back and watch my video on business writing. And then here's one, this one. I don't know if you guys can see that one. Let me go. This one's got major problems. Here we go. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to reshare. I'll just show you one more, and I think you guys get the gist of this. So here's another letter. Oops, sorry. Can you guys see that? What does it say at the top?
To LA Fitness.
Okay, perfect. So here, this was supposed to be a letter. So number one, they made it like an email, because the difference between a memo and an email is the difference is it's memos or emails. The email program automatically makes the title block, but for this class, I want you to make the title block, and it should just be single spaced, not tabbed over, and it's very much like a memo other than that. But in this case, it's supposed to be a letter. And again, you have these big, lengthy, long paragraphs, right? And that's what you might typically see in a letter today. They did do a heading here, why Pitaya Cocoa Blend. And then, so that might grab your attention. But again, these paragraphs are lengthy. So this one, if we count the lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's, again, I said on a long document, you can do 8 lines. So in this case, I probably would have made this 2 paragraphs. And I would have made this definitely 2 paragraphs. They do have a little bit of italicized right here. And so I appreciate that, but not enough to really grab your attention. They did use some quotes and stuff, but why not use bold, italicize, all caps to make important things stand out, especially numbers, dates, times, etc. Those should definitely always be bold. Like this dollar right here should be bold. And then in this case, they did do a proper signature block for a email. So, but not a letter. So this would be an email signature block, but not a letter signature block. And the email always includes a full signature block. So you can usually go into your email program and set it up to where it automatically adds that to all of your emails. But it should include your name, your company name, your email address, and your phone number. And if you have an extension, it would also include your extension. That's a proper email signature block. But this was a letter. So it was formatted like an email, although it was supposed to be a letter. So all right. So I think you guys get the point, right? What we're trying to do.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty much all I had to talk about. I wasn't going to go through the PowerPoint. I just was going to do this brief video. Hopefully it was a little less than an hour long. And then that way I can save it and post it for other students. So anyway, just to go back over this one more time, because I think the more times I say it, the better. And I'm going to add something here to this list. So I'm going to go back to our list. So here it is. And the other thing I'm going to put on here is, I'll just add it right here, is no indents. No indents. Do not indent your paragraph. That may be acceptable for essays, but it's not acceptable for business writing. You should always be fully left justified. I didn't mention this, but on the right side of your document, so I don't know if you guys know what justified is versus not justified, but if you, here, I'll just show you real quick, because this is probably one thing that could be beneficial to you. Oh, that's not a good example. Hold on, let me open one of those letters again that I had. Let's open a good letter bad. All right, that should work. Let me see. I can't see it anyway. Okay, hold on just a second. Sorry. All right, that'll work. All right, let me share my screen one more time and then we'll end this. If I go to share screen and I go to letter bad. Okay, so here's that letter again. So if you notice on this one, when I say no indent, I mean, obviously don't do that. And then left justified, notice how everything lines up on the left. So that's left justified. Now I could make this left and right justified by selecting the whole body of text, coming up here to Word and selecting that feature. But that's okay. I personally like it that way for my own writing, but in business writing, they say to make your right edge jagged. So it would look like this. In other words, wherever the sentence automatically rolls over, you just leave it. So the right edge is jagged, but the left edge is justified. That's considered appropriate for business writing. I'll accept either, but not on the left. I'll not accept the indents. So if you do a bunch of indents, I'm going to mark you down for that. Also, your margins, if you want to know how to set your margins, you can come here to, excuse me, it should be under layout. And then all the way to the left here is margins. And you can do normal margins, which is 1 inch. So they weren't even using the normal margins. If you want to customize your margins, you can come down here and you can set what you want them to be. So if you have a really short document, you can make them 1.5 on your right and left. So 1.5, 1.5, and then when I hit OK, you'll see it. Oop, they had a problem here. They have this whole thing. There you go. Anyway, so that's the 1.5. And this paragraph didn't get moved either. Yeah, they did some kind of funky formatting. But anyway, so there you go. That gives you more length to your document. But again, this one's got a lot of problems. So that's how you do margins. All right. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions before I close out?
No, thank you very much.
All right. Well, you guys have a great week and
Same.
get to work on your writing assignments. I think last week you had the digital channels, right? The instant message and blog. Is that what you guys did last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
Okay. And then I think this week you start your memo, your first memo. So I did give you some key on that in this time together. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. I appreciate
All right. Make
it.
sure you look at your appendix for memo as well as the samples in the book. So
Okay, great.
Got it.
Hey,
Thank
guys.
you.
You're welcome. Have a great week. Thanks for your time
You do
today.
the same. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Adriana.